So what's the first step? How do you help people pick up the gold on the floor, find the low-hanging fruit?
Those are three options of our ability to do a crawl, add real value within a matter of a handful of weeks. And then we start to look at that blueprint of where we want to go next, because there's a large menu of identifying the leak and trying to achieve precision.
In the tech world of running revenue, you're dealing with a big challenge, trying to bring together and simplify things, especially regarding tools for sales and revenue. Picture it like sorting through a bunch of puzzle pieces. There are many options, but the real puzzle is figuring out how to fit them together to make your work smoother. How can you make your tech tools work well together for sales and revenue? It's a bit tricky, like finding the right mix. But getting it right could mean getting more done and succeeding in the revenue scene. Andy Byrne is the co-founder and CEO of Clari, a revenue and go-to-market strategist, and a leader in revenue collaboration and governance. In this episode of the Run Revenue Show, Andy discusses the concept of consolidation in the tech industry, particularly in relation to revenue and sales technology, the challenges and pain points that revenue teams face, such as working with multiple tools and dealing with the inefficiencies of manual processes, the concept of revenue leak, and how it can hinder revenue growth and predictability, and more. Listen through this full episode to learn the tips and tricks to succeed in the tech world and run your revenue like a pro.
I'm Kyle Coleman, sales pro turned SVP of marketing at Clari. Run Revenue is the show where revenue pros learn to stop revenue leak, achieve revenue precision, and grow their companies and careers.
This is Run Revenue Show with Kyle Coleman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Run Revenue Show. I am joined today by my CEO, Andy Byrne. Andy, how you doing?
What's up, Kyle?
Living the dream. I got strep throat. I can barely talk. No place I'd rather be.
I'm just recovering for Thanksgiving holiday. You can tell it's a Thanksgiving week with a little bit of shadow here, but ready to go.
The topic for today, Andy, is you and I have been speaking. You've been on a crazy world tour, talking to CEOs, talking to CFOs, CROs, and this theme of consolidation, tech consolidation, keeps coming up over and over again. And so we want to dig into that because what you've uncovered in these meetings is, I think, a little bit unorthodox and maybe not the way that everybody is thinking about the virtues of consolidation. So we're going to talk about that. But first, what's the current state of revenue technology, sales technology, marketing tech? What are you hearing from the execs that you're speaking with?
Two things. One, pain. And two, what the industry calls the three-headed hydra that actually drives that pain. If you think about go into the world of a revenue team from rep to exec and the 13-week cadence that they look to run, all those meetings that happen every day of every week of every month of the quarter, current quarter, next quarter, 13-week quarter, it is a horrible show. And what's happening is these teams that are their most important teams in the company, they're running revenue. They're in a CRM. They're trying to either run their one-on-ones or their slip deal reviews, their PG Mondays, even their forecast calls. And the CRM doesn't do exactly what they want it to do. So what do, Kyle? They export to Excel. And I've lived this for literally 30 years of my career. And there's Excel hell from rep all the way up to the exec. It's just a nightmare. And then as we try to get more strategic and we want to go macro and think about things like mix, as you go up the hierarchy, because you have to aggregate data, Excel breaks. So we go into BI. So you got CRM, Excel, BI. This is a three-headed hydra. And it is so painful. It's time consuming. It's manual. There's no single source of truth. Everybody's in different systems. And that is the biggest thing that's causing a massive amount of pain that's driving what the industry is really, really focused around is called revenue leak. And that is the biggest topic that everybody is talking about now is how do we identify the leak and eliminate that leak so we can drive more growth, more predictability.
We'll get into that revenue leak. How do you identify it? How do you solve it? But something else that you said to me when we were talking last week that really stuck with me, you said you're meeting with a CRO who said that her team has 20 different tools that they're always swivel chairing among and between, and she just feels like their team actually can't get their work done. So three-headed hydra, BI, CRM, spreadsheets is one part of the problem. But it sounds like this kind of point solutions that revenue teams have adopted is another part of the problem. Is that what you're seeing as well?
If you think about three-headed hydra, it's largely an internal workflow situation. And then there's external tools that they need to use to reach out to the customer and try to engage with them, or they want to make sure that they're recording their conversations so they can get better coaching. Yes, there's a litany of other tools that they're using for their external workflows as well. And that is the proverbial swivel chair. And what we're hearing from customers is that they want to simplify that down. That's why everyone's saying, hey, consolidate. You hear it everywhere. They want to reduce their spend, right? And not have spending on all these tools. And they also want to unify the experience and allow from rep to exec, allow them to have one cockpit to be able to run revenue, both their external execution workflows and their internal execution workflows from rep to exec.
The phrase that this CRO used, she said, our team is just feeling this tech fatigue. They don't know which tool to go to for what or when. They're constantly switching. Productivity is just an absolute drained, and revenue leak is a big problem. It's funny because the industry has coined this term revenue leak, and BCG did a study that said $2 trillion, actually I think it was $2.1 trillion every year of economic value is destroyed to breakdowns in the revenue process. It's destroyed due to revenue leak. And when our Clari data scientists went and looked at customer data before adopting Clari, they saw that the average company leaks 14.9% of their top line revenue. It's absolutely insane. And it's happening at every stage of the funnel: create, convert, close. So talk to us, Andy, about how you're seeing and how other execs are spotting revenue leak at all those different parts of the funnel.
I actually have a great example from yesterday afternoon. I talked to a large telco conglomerate that owns both telco infrastructure, they own content management, big multi-billion-dollar corporation. And it was really interesting how they were thinking about the problem. They were thinking about the problem of, okay, I need to be in the numbers and I need to crunch these numbers and figure out what's going on. The reality is what they need to do, and changing their thinking, is that they first principles, they need to start with, where are you leaking revenue? Do you have any idea where you're leaking revenue? And I actually started the conversation, Kyle, mentioning, do you know how you're running revenue? And the gentleman looked at me like they saw a ghost. And they said, what do you mean? I said, do you know how your team's running every meeting of every day of every week of the month of the quarter? Do you know how you guys run it? Do you know, are you good or are you bad? They had no idea. So we started there and we said, hey, look, if you don't know from rep to exec how that's running, then that's problem number one that you need to go solve. Problem number two is identifying the leak that's happening across that 13-week cadence. And a lot of people on this call, we go, okay, Andy, what are examples of leak? Bunch of leads that get produced by marketing that never really get followed up on. There's deals, large inventories or cohorts of deals that slip and you don't have any idea why they slip, or deals that were in commit, or deals that you lost and you have no idea why. You're doing this after the fact. The industry is shifting from, hey, this is a financial number crunching process, to let's go identify through new technology and new platforms the ability to identify all of our leak. To your point, 15% of a company's revenue is lost due to leak. Imagine if you're running $1 billion company, you're losing 150 million. That's right there. That's the biggest opportunity hiding in plain sight. So I think the aha for the industry and why leak is such a big deal is relatively straightforward to go after and get that leak. Try to achieve what the industry calls total revenue precision, which is predictable, repeatable ability to maximize how we drive revenue and realize that revenue. In that process, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, making sure you understand the process by which you're running revenue to do that. And I think that is a big shift from, let's get some financial analysts and a bunch of other Excel spreadsheets and turn on a Tableau and try to figure out, using some weighted averages and our own internal predictive scoring, to figure out what is going wrong. This is the big sea change around identifying revenue leak and trying to achieve revenue precision, and why revenue operations was CNBC dropped their recent jobs report earlier this year. Fastest growing job in the United States, 500,000 jobs on LinkedIn, as denoted by CNBC earlier this year. So it's a big deal.
It's wild. And what's so interesting is, as you started this conversation, Andy, talking about consolidation, the primary reason that a lot of folks give for consolidation is cost savings. Of course, we need to reduce costs, operational efficiencies, all those sorts of things. Totally get that. However, cutting costs is only half of a strategy. A full strategy requires you to be mindful about spend, of course, but also to master the revenue process. And that's what you're talking about, treating revenue as a business process, as the most important business process, and running that really tight 13-week cadence. So if we go from this world of the three-headed hydra and disconnected point solutions to this world of a unified revenue platform, how can a unified platform facilitate that revenue process?
Most of my time right now is spent with boards and spent with CEOs, CROs, and CFOs. Most of my time is there. As we explore together the fact that they want to streamline how they run revenue, we realize what's happening in those meetings. Like all of those employees, whether they're in sales or SE, a salesperson, a CSM, marketing might be in these meetings. These are all revenue critical employees. And what are they trying to do, Kyle? They're trying to collaborate around the most important business process that is revenue. What boards are saying is, are we executing revenue collaboration at the highest level? That's one. And that's a really interesting dialogue that's driving the ability for us to identify hot spots. As an example for the viewers here, what is a hotspot, Andy? Get us street level. You don't run slip deal reviews on a Thursday afternoon. You wait until after the end of the quarter. That's crazy. That shift done by all of our customers has allowed them to figure out in week 3 that they have a problem. It's an execution problem. It's a rep issue. It's a product line. It's a geo issue. That's an example, Kyle, of looking at how we're collaborating around revenue and making the change.
I'll give another example, Andy, on the post-sales side. And we see this a lot, especially in this macro, is unutilized licenses. So what normally happens at these companies, they experience some sort of downsell or they experience some sort of churn, and it's, oh, shoot, if only we would have seen that coming. But you can see that coming if you have a product utilization moment in your revenue cadence where week 2 of the quarter, you're looking at all your renewals, you're seeing what kind of usage there is, and you're putting together some sort of remediation plan to go and solve that problem so that you don't get surprised in week 13 with the churn.
Every single person that's in the process, every revenue critical employee, we're trying to help them realize their fullest potential, do their best job in that one-on-one, in that forecast call, in that on PG Monday, in a white space analysis that we want to do to go after on a post-sales NDR motion. We're helping them with revenue collaboration. We'll call it the army that's executing that 13-week cadence. Now, I think what's super interesting is, what are the executives trying to do? What they're trying to do is they're trying to actually identify all the leak, achieve total revenue precision, and the commentary that's coming out from boards is what they call revenue governance. Okay, so we have revenue collaboration, helping the employees realize their fullest potential. The execs are trying to do the following things. They're trying to drive more discipline, more accountability, more alignment, and control the outcomes. How do you do that across thousands of people? How can we do that? It is by giving us the ability, giving them the instrumentation, giving them the insights, and then also giving them the one user experience that's fully unified from rep all the way up to the boardroom to allow them to identify the leak, help revenue collaboration be the best run process in our 13-week cadence, and then make sure that we are controlling the outcomes. And ideally, what they're trying to do is design what we call a beat and raise cadence quarter over quarter. To do that, best practices is what the industry is now calling revenue governance. So collaboration, governance, the industry is calling it RevCG.
RevCG, revenue collaboration and governance. And Andy, you've talked about finding these hotspots. You talked about this revenue cadence. But another thing that I've heard you coming out of these meetings with CEOs, CFOs, you talking a lot about is blueprinting. Like we got to go 0 to 1 and help these folks to the crawl, walk, run in creating this revenue cadence blueprint for them. How are we thinking about doing that? And I know some pretty exciting things happening with Deloitte as well.
This is probably the thing I'm most excited about, most proud of, is that we have 1,500 customers. We have over $2 trillion worth of pipeline that's flowed through our platform at this point. Pretty fun going from two of us in a garage to where we're at right now. Great companies, ADP, Capital One, Adobe, Workday. These are some of the best well-run revenue org. What we're doing for these orgs, and we're bringing in the SI community like a Deloitte, is we're helping them blueprint and what we call a revenue cadence, okay? And I'm going to say this one more time and make sure this lands with the audience. Every meeting of every day, of every week, of every month of the quarter, map that out. We now come in with an SI like a Deloitte who's turning on a revenue transformation practice, and we are helping them identify the hot spots where they can really turn on just a simple move. Like I said, the slip deal review, or as an example, you don't really start doing next quarter management in these revenue moments until week 10. Let's move that up. These are simple moves or hot spots that allow our customers to pretty easily drive more creation of pipeline, conversion of pipeline, and closing of pipeline. So that's the revenue blueprinting and the revenue cadences that we're rolling out.
What's the first step for companies? What do you suggest when you go in? I know a lot of CEOs, they put you to work, Andy, because you go to these meetings and then you come out of these meetings and the CEO say, hey, you're an extension of our team now. And that's the beauty of the partnership, I think, with you and with Clari. So what's the first step? How do you help people pick up the gold on the floor, find the low-hanging fruit?
There's a handful of steps. It depends on where the biggest pain is. And I'll give you 3 examples of where we try to coach our revenue leaders and the people that want to deploy the platform on what we call crawl, walk, run. Because trying to go wall to wall at a workday like that takes time to do that revenue transformation. So where do you start? Option A is just go do a revenue leak assessment. Bring in our platform. It's literally up and running in a handful of days. It doesn't take an army of people to do it. It's one person. And we tie into the CRM infrastructure, and we can tie into Exchange or Gmail, and we can show you where you're leaking revenue within a matter of days. So that's number 1. Let's do a revenue leak assessment. Let's show you where you can actually focus on where you're leaking revenue, and then we can turn on the platform, enable the folks in those revenue moments to drive more convert or close or creation of pipeline. So that's 1. 2, you might have a pipeline creation issue. And maybe what you want to do is your crawl is, hey, let's just turn on our conversational intelligence. Let's turn on our sales engagement. And we can start there, and we can do a crawl on your external workflows, and we can start to help you with the creation of more pipeline. Or you might have just a burning forecast issue, and you just want to solve that Thursday afternoon because you're having a hard time answering the most important question, and does this we meet, beat, or miss? Turn on the forecasting tab. Let's get everybody out of Excel hell, and let's just start there. Those are 3 options of our ability to do a crawl, add real value within a matter of a handful of weeks. And then we start to look at that blueprint of where we want to go next, because there's a large menu of identifying the leak and trying to achieve precision. And we just knock those things down. It's not just about the tech, it's also about our expertise. And now we're bringing that expertise and the technology to bear with our partner community, the SI community. What's happening here, Kyle, is we are delivering what we believe is the most important database inside the company, inside the enterprise. If you think, Kyle, about what customers have, they have a CRM database, they got a marketing database, they have an ERP database, and now for the first time, a revenue database. And underneath Clari, what we're doing is we're delivering what is, we think, the most important database inside the enterprise that can take in all of this revenue critical signal, arm all those revenue critical employees to do collaboration and governance around the most important business process, driving efficiency, growth, predictability. And that's the way we see the world.
And so the advice to listeners as you're thinking about consolidation, as you're thinking about the revenue platform, there should be a crawl, walk, run. You can't go and implement end-to-end platform for everything on day one. So you need to think about the crawl, walk, run. Where is the brightest burning fire? And a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, I have a pipeline creation problem. And we'll say to them, what you really have is a pipeline creation cadence problem. You need to make sure that you have the tooling, yes, but also that you have the right revenue moments happening with the right revenue critical employees at the right time to go and create this cadence, this always on cadence for pipe creation. Same thing for conversion, same thing for closing, same thing for renewals and expansion, all across the revenue process. And if a single platform can deliver on all of those things, then you're thinking about your tooling, you're thinking about your technology, you're thinking about your consolidation initiatives correctly. If you adopt a platform that cannot do those things, you're probably going to have some regrets. So think about what your brightest burning problems are. Think about the sequence in which you need to solve them. And then think about the consistency and the convenience of doing all of these things in a single platform where all your revenue critical employees can collaborate.
I think that my strategic frame I try to land with all of our prospects and customers is create, convert, close. When you hear somebody say, identify all of your burning problem, like that's actually not the right approach, because then you're going to get a laundry list of stuff and you're not being focused and you're not prioritizing. So I try to share, go have a provocative conversation of if you were going to make one bet on your revenue process, is it create, is it convert, is it close? Where would you make that bet? And you drive a e-staff level, offsite level conversation, and you run and you harvest the thinking across your revenue leaders about where they think the issues are. And then you try to normalize on, okay, we're going to make a bet and we're going to align that this is where we have the biggest issues in the company. Then you can then look at, so now we've done, that's move one. Move two is, okay, let's look at our blueprint for if we decided that, hey, we're really struggling with S2 to S3 across all geos. And we're going to say, okay, let's now look at how do we run those meetings? Who are in these meetings? How are we collaborating? And how do we make sure we control and govern what happens there? In that process, we identify where things are stuck, where things are leaking, and we do the change management. And then we also make sure they have the right instrumentation with the revenue database and with our platform to help those employees from rep to exec realize their fullest potential. And you start to see, Kyle, a methodical increase of conversion rates and win rates. And that is the process by which people can drive more efficiency, growth, predictability. It's a no bullshit process that we have done time and time again across 1,500 customers. And our best work is in front of us. We're just getting started with this revenue cadence, the blueprinting, and really the industry's grabbing onto RevCG, collaboration and governance, in a way that I didn't think it would take up this quickly. So I'm excited about it, and obviously excited to tell the world.
It's amazing how those little incremental changes that you can make, they add up, they compound into something that's exponential, into something that really is transformational. And it all starts with the mindset. It starts with thinking of revenue as a process and ensuring that your technology is supporting that process. So Andy Byrne, CEO of Clari, thank you so much. One last question for you. You're an introspective guy. You're a thoughtful guy. You're a man of many interests. What's a book that you're reading right now that you would recommend to other revenue leaders?
The book I'm reading right now that actually is not about revenue, but is more about leadership, is a book that I'm recommending to everybody. It's called The Coaching Habit. That's number one. And then the other book that I'm reading that's really powerful is called Spiritual Intelligence by Yossi Amram, who is a dear friend and executive coach of mine. Those are the two books that I think are transformational for me as a leader. A lot of times when we're running revenue and we're trying to get shit done and we're trying to hit a number, we forget that we have to develop our people. We are just performance, trying to make a process execute, but the second part of our job is to develop our people to realize their fullest potential. Those are two books that I think everybody should read in their career, and that will help their people develop to be the next leaders in the org, which is part of our job as managers and leaders, is to try to help them be better leaders, and eventually they replace us.
Thank you so much for the time, Andy. Really appreciate it. And that is a wrap for this episode of the Run Revenue Show. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends, share the podcast, and we will catch you next week.
Don't let what you heard today go to waste. Take 2 minutes to download today's checklist to get your priorities in line for the week. You can find that linked in our show notes. And if you liked what you heard, make sure you give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. We'll be back next Monday with more to help you win your week.